Hi, welcome to Cybersecurity Workshops. This is David Raymond, the director of the Virginia Cyber Range, and this is our continuing series on the Linux command line interface. So this is moving around the command line interface. So this is from a course by Matthew Vogel at Tidewater Community College. We're in Module 1, Basics of the CLI, and so last time we talked about some very introductory Bash basics. We talked about Linux, what it is, why we use it, and then we sort of dove into the terminal window and how to use the command line interface, which is that's what this series of lessons is all about in this course by Matthew Vogel. It's all about the CLI, which is pretty integral to a cybersecurity professional's use of a Linux system. So still in Module 1, lesson number 2, second of 2 lessons in Module 1. So this is, again, very introductory. And next time we'll move on to Module 2 that gets into file systems and user permissions and that sort of thing. So for you teachers, let me just jump over to the Virginia Cyber Range webpage real quick. So this course, again, is in the courseware repository, and if I searched on command line in the courseware repository, and if I do that, I see a course called Introduction to the Command Line, and Module 1 is Basics of Using the CLI, and then Lesson 2 is Moving Around the CLI. So here we have a lesson plan, a series of presentation slides that I'm going to use in this talk today, and then there's a hands-on exercise, and I would encourage you to after this lecture, to have your students jump into that hands-on lab exercise. All right, so moving around the CLI, obviously short for command line interface. So this is going to be a relatively short discussion, pretty simple but pretty important. You have to understand how to move the cursor around the command line interface because the mouse doesn't work, right? So you've probably noticed that you can click your mouse inside the command line interface inside the terminal window. That makes that terminal window the active window, but it doesn't do. It's a text-only environment, right? Mouse doesn't work. It does work. It makes the terminal window the active window, but it doesn't move the cursor inside the terminal window. So moving the cursor has to be done with keyboard commands, and there are we're going to talk about the keyboard commands that we can use to do this. Some movements can be done with the up and down arrow keys, backspace, home, delete, etc. There's some other control keys that you can use to do similar things. And this seems very simple, very introductory, but quickly moving your cursor around the command line interface around the terminal window is going to make your life a lot easier. As you have to spend more time in the CLI. So we'll look at some keyboard combinations to do some interesting things, some basic things and some more interesting things. And the keyboard combinations use the control key or the alt key to do the thing that we need to do. And we'll jump through all those things. So we'll start at the beginning. Again, Control A. Control A moves the cursor to the front of the line. So, and when we say Control A, Control plus A, what that means is to hold down the Control key and then press the A. It's like if you're going to make an uppercase A, you would hold down the Shift key and press the A key. With the Control key, similar idea. Hold down the Control key, press the A key. So if we look at that in real life here, so if I start typing a line of text, echo hello world, and I realize, oh, I forgot the E in echo, right? So I could use my mouse and move around in that line, but hitting my mouse 10 times, especially if I typed in a lot of stuff, it's just slow. And so the Control A key moves the cursor to the front of the line. So what I can do here is I can hit Control A, and now my cursor is at the very start of the line. I can type in my E, hit Enter, and now I get what I want, right? So Control A, move the cursor to the start of the line. And the Home key does a similar thing. So so I can type, if I have a Home key, I can hit the Home key and go to the beginning of the line. You don't always have a Home key, right? So that's why the Control key combinations are important as well. And you know, depends on the keyboard, depends on the operating system. You know, a Home key may or may not always be there, but the Control key combinations are almost always going to be available to you. So Control A, move to the start of the line. Control E moves to the end of the line. Okay, so I can hit Control E, moves me to the end. Control A moves me to the start. Similarly, if I type the end key, I can go to the end of the line. Home key brings me to the beginning, so I can go back and forth either with Control A or Home, Control E or end. Control H moves the cursor back one space and moves the character, right? So removes the character that was there. So this is essentially backspace. So if I'm at the end of my line and I hit Control H, that is gonna move the cursor back one and delete the character under the key or under the cursor. So similar to backspace, I can do backspace and get similar functionality. And then I can type my stuff back in. Control minus is going to undo the last thing that I did. So Control minus is like undo. The minus key is, depends on your keyboard. The minus key is somewhere usually in the upper right-hand corner. You know, it can be end of the line of numbers, or it can be, you know, somewhere in the upper right-hand corner. I have two keyboards in front of me, and it's in two slightly different places on these two different keyboards, but in both cases, it's in the upper right-hand corner area of the keyboard. So let me go back to my command line here. So again, if I type something in, and then I do Control. So if I do Control so here I'm in my web browser, my Virginia Cyber Range Kali Linux virtual machine. If I hit Control minus here, that's an undo, right? What that undid, instead of undoing the thing inside my terminal window, it undid my thing at the virtual machine level. And the last thing I did at that level was I increased the size of my terminal window. So basically I zoomed in, right? So to get this to work, in this case, in the terminal window, instead of just hitting Control minus, I hit Control Shift minus, and now that's going to do my that's going to execute my undo function. And so, you know, the point being is that depending on the environment that you're in, the command might be slightly different, and so you might have to experiment a little bit to get what you want. But here, if I delete a couple of characters, for example, then I hit Control Shift minus, it's undoing that delete, so I'm getting my characters back. Control U is it's going to clear the current line from the cursor to the front of the line. So from the cursor to the beginning of the line. Control U. So if I type in some stuff and I go back and I decide, well, I didn't want to echo that. I wanted to do something else with it. If I Control U, okay, it deletes everything back to the beginning of the line. And you know, that's helpful if I need to delete an individual command, or if I have a very long. I mean, you're gonna find yourself as you spend more and more time in the command line, you're gonna have commands that you type in that are gonna encompass, you know, a full line or even multiple lines of the command line of stuff. You know, you'll have a command, and then you'll have some command line switches, and then you might pipe that command into another command, and so things get very complex. And by being able to delete, you know, portions of the command line or individual words at a time or individual sections, that just gives you the flexibility that you need to do things much more efficiently. So Control U, clear the current location of the cursor to the front of the line. Okay, then what's the next thing after that? Maybe I want to clear the line from the location of the cursor to the end of the line. So, for example, echo. Maybe I want to, where am I here? Well, okay, maybe I want to echo is more text. And I decide, well, maybe that's not what I wanted to put in. I want to hit the Control K, and I want to put in words here. And you know, so this is powerful because I might have a thing where I you know, have an echo, and then I have a thing where I say something else, and then, you know, I pipe again, and then I, you know, do some more stuff, and then I decide, well, maybe I wanted to pipe into something else, or maybe I want to get rid of that pipe. So here I can hit Control K. It's going to delete all the rest, and you know, then I'm not having to delete individual characters. Clear the now we can put multiple key combinations together to clear the entire line. So there's no control key combination that'll delete an entire line for me, but if I pair a couple of these things up, then I can delete an entire line. So for example, if I hit Control E to go to the end of the line, then I can hit Control U to clear everything before it, and then similarly, if I hit Control A to go to the beginning of the line, then I use the Control K, I can delete everything after the cursor, and that's going to delete the whole line. So for example, here is lots of stuff typed. So I can go to the beginning of the line with the Control A, and then I can use Control K, and that's going to delete everything after the cursor. So since I'm at the beginning of the line, everything after the cursor is the whole line. And then another interesting thing I can do is clear the entire screen. And so here I have a lot of stuff on the screen, and you know, depending on what I'm doing, it can get distracting to have all this other text on the screen. And so the Control L shortcut clears the screen and brings me back to a blank line all by itself. So Control L clears the terminal window. So that can be helpful just to get rid of the clutter. Okay, so so if you recall, last time we talked about the history command and the ability to go back and forth in your command history. And so here's some keys, some shortcut combinations that'll let you do that. And here we have the Control P that lets you go back in your history, and Control N that lets you go forward in your history. Control P and Control N. So you can think of this as previous, Control P, previous, and Control N, next. So if I go back to my terminal window here, if I hit Control P, I go to my previous line, P again, so I'm moving up the command history. And then if I, whoops, there's a bit of a caveat on this one, right? So Control P is moving me up in my command history. Control N normally would move me forward in my command history, but a bit of a caveat here. If you're using a CyberRange VM in your web browser, the Control N is a command to the web browser, depending on the web browser, but so I'm using Chrome here. Control N is, instead of being interpreted by your Kali Linux VM in the browser tab. The Control N is going to be grabbed by the browser, and it's going to create a new window. So the Control N command in a CyberRange VM or in another VM that's displayed using a browser tab, then the Control N is not going to do what you want. It's not going to go to the next command in the history on the terminal line. So instead, you should use the down arrow, just like we talked about last time. So this is another case in which you just have to sort of, in your particular situation, understand what works and doesn't work. Alt B is going to move the cursor back one word, and it's going to move when you do it, it's going to move the cursor to the first letter of the previous word. So if I hit Alt, I have Alt and B, so it brings me back a word. This is really useful to move. If you want to move the cursor, you don't want to move it all the way to the beginning of the line. You don't want to use single arrow or individual character key to move it one character at a time, again, because that just takes a long time. Using Alt B will move the cursor a word previous. Then the opposite of that is Alt F, move the cursor forward one word, and cursor is placed in the space before the first letter of the word. Here's another case where the Alt F, if you're on your CyberRange virtual machine, Kali Linux virtual machine, the Alt F isn't going to act as expected. Instead, you're going to the terminal is going to grab that Alt F and think that you're trying to do something with the file menu. So so this behavior is different depending on the environment that you're in. So Alt D deletes the text from the cursor to the end of the current word. So if you wanted, so we looked at moving the cursor to somewhere in the middle of a line and then deleting everything from there to the beginning or everything from there to the end. And sometimes you just want to delete individual words in the middle of something. And again, you could move to the end of the word and then hit backspace, 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 but that's not very efficient. And if you're going to be efficient on the command line, you want to be able to delete entire words at a time. And so Alt D is going to delete from the cursor to the end of the current word. So if I went in the middle here, I could say Alt D, and that's going to delete to the end of the current word. So it doesn't delete the whole word, it deletes to the end of the current word. And a punctuation is not a word, so in this case that exclamation mark didn't get deleted. But if I went back here, I hit Alt D, it's going to delete to the end of that word. You can use Control D to delete the character under the cursor, same as using the delete key. So Control D, same as delete. And sorry, I went back. I thought I missed something there, but I think I covered what I wanted to cover. Okay, so so those are the Control and Alt key combinations that are useful for navigating the command line. Again, it makes life easier because you can do things much more efficiently. The last concept here we'll cover is this notion of tab autocomplete, and this functionality is super helpful, and you should maximize. If you don't remember any of those other Control key combinations or Alt key combinations, tab autocomplete is something that you're going to hopefully learn to love, because this will significantly reduce the amount of typing that you have to do. What the tab key does in the terminal is it will autocomplete and it will autocomplete whatever it thinks you're trying to type in. And so what do I mean by that? It autocompletes what it thinks you're trying to type in. Well, it doesn't. So what the terminal will do is it will it knows what the possibilities are, right? So this thing is not using AI to analyze your typing and try to determine, what you're trying to do. It's not like that at all. It's simply that, when you start typing, there are a limited number of valid things that you can be trying to do in the terminal window, and the tab autocomplete will do its best to figure out what you're trying to do, and it will complete the word or the phrase that you're trying to type in, if it can, right? If it can interpret the thing that you're trying to do. And so it'll make more sense if I show an example here. So let me go to the next slide. For example, if I'm going to type in history, and I type in HI and then hit tab. So let me get a clear line here. So if I type in HI and then hit tab, that didn't do anything. Now if I type in HIST and I hit tab, it's going to finish history, and then I hit enter and I get my output. If I type in HI and hit tab, you might say, well, why didn't it predict that I'm trying to type in history? Well, the reason is because there are multiple different commands that start with HI. And so if I hit tab again, what I'm going to get is the list of the things that I could be trying to do, right? These are the possible commands that I could be trying to type in. So history is on that list, right? So there's history right there, but there's all kinds of other stuff that I could have been trying to do. And so if I hit HI and then tab twice, then I get the list of possible things. Then I say, okay, well, what I wanted to do is history, so I need to get the S in there, and then I tab again, and then it completes the line, because now there aren't any other commands that start with HIS. So I hit enter, and now I get what I want. That's super powerful, and it doesn't only work with the command, it works with different things too. So if I am trying to take an action on a particular file in a directory, and I can do the same thing. Like if I'm trying to cat a file, I can. So let's say if I do echo hello world, and then remember we learned this last time, we're going to redirect, and then I'm going to put that in file 1, and then if I say echo hello 2 and I redirect that into file 2, now if I list the contents of my directory, I see I have these things called file 1 and file 2, and if I type in cat, and then FI and I hit tab, it's going to complete up to the end of the word file. Of course, file all by itself isn't a thing, so I get this. So when I hit enter, I get this error that says no such file or directory. So so I'll say cat FI, I hit tab again, and what I get is the list of possibilities, right? So I could have been trying to type in file 1, or I could have been trying to type in file 2. So if I hit the 2 tab, I know that the tab completed because it skips a space at the end. And now I get what I want, right? I got the contents of file 2 dumped to the screen. So the tab completion works not only for commands at the very beginning of the command line, but it also works for the kinds of files that you're trying to operate on. And again, the terminal window knows the possible files that you could be trying to do that thing to, and it's going to do its best to do the autocomplete. If you're trying to change directories, you get similar functionality. So next time we're going to talk about navigating the file system in a Linux terminal window. And so if you're trying to change directories and you use the change directory command, and then you start typing a directory, you can use autocomplete to get the rest of it automatically completed. So tab autocomplete is the thing that you're going to use a lot in the terminal window, and this is something that I will definitely reinforce as I demonstrate the things we do over the next several command line interface lessons. Okay, so now I would encourage students to do the lab that's associated with this lesson, and so teachers, you're going to have to grab that lab from the courseware repository and share that with your students. All right, so thanks. And next time we will move on to module 2 of an introduction to the command line interface.